Hello. um, yeah, I don't do very good with intros for the most part, as you've probably noticed. This video is going to be about Fantasia 2000. Dun, 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 dun. Fantasia 2000 obviously came out in 2000. The idea of it actually going all the way back stretches all the way back to the original Fantasia, which was, of course, the third video I did in this series. It was the third movie that Disney ever made, right after Snow White and then Pinocchio. Fantasia, as I mentioned, way back in the first in the about the original Fantasia, which is why these are two separate videos, is because there's so much that happens in this Fantasia video and the original, so they're two separate videos. This one, the idea for the Fantasia in and of itself was supposed to be a continually evolving piece, that each time you went and saw it at the theater, it would be some new pieces and some old pieces. And that was something that Walt really wanted to try to do. Disney was always very much about innovation and, innovating when it came to, synchronized sound and then color and then, the full length animated feature and the whiny dog in the background. Or is the whiny dog just me? I don't know if Disney had that problem or not. They worked with animals at various points in times on the movies and also for sketching. But moving on back to Fantasia, the idea was supposed to be that you go see it every couple of years, and it would be some old stuff, like maybe still like have the Nutcracker there and have the Sorcerer's Apprentice there, but then have some new things as well. And Walt had done all this different research on all these different other types of classical music that he wanted to do. But unfortunately, because Fantasia had not been well received at the time, at the time frame it hadn't been well received. But its saving grace, 50 some years later, was VHS. Fantasia's saving grace was VHS, which was something Walt probably never even saw coming. And actually, the one that brought the idea of doing Fantasia 2000, well, it was in the early 90s, so it wasn't like called Fantasia 2000 at that point in time. It was just going to be called Fantasia Continued. But it was actually Walt's nephew, Roy Disney, who actually, the DVD itself starts with an introduction of Roy doing, like, talking about, like, he remembered when Fantasia was new, when he remembered his father, who was Walt's business partner, talking about it, of course, that they had, done all these different ideas that they had wanted to do, and that Fantasia was like the one thing that Walt kept looking back on, because he had wanted so much to continually change this concert piece and bring these new things into, make sure that people were still familiar with these different types of classical stories, but classical music in and of itself. And that was really one of the things that Walt wanted to do. And Roy, who was now in charge of Disney at the time, he was brought in to be head of the animation department in the late 80s. And he was the one that kind of did, that helped bring us, Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and, insert name of all the other movies in the 90s at this point in time. And, all the movies that were, part of my childhood and everything. Like, I had, VHS, as I said, I had so many of these different Disney movies, including Fantasia and Fantasia 2000, later on VHS, and I would love watching them. I did love Fantasia at the time. The fact that Fantasia had been such a huge hit on VHS, Roy used that as a way of justifying, well, let's do another variation of Fantasia with some new pieces. And it had originally been intended, the Fantasia Continued, was originally still going to have, like, the Nutcracker Suite was still going to be in it, along with the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and I think there was going to be one other piece that was still going to be in it that was from the original series, the original one. Of course, if you've seen Fantasia 2000, the only piece that is left from the original is the Sorcerer's Apprentice, which is perfectly fine. I still love the Sorcerer's Apprentice. I'm not going to talk about it too much since I talked about it so much in the original, but I'll still make mention of it. But they ended up bringing in so many different new ones, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. So the first sequence that we start out with is, the most recognizable notes, most likely in music, the dun 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 dun, from, Ludwig von Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Um, that was it's a much shorter version of it. Quite obviously, they didn't use the entire thing. They cut it down to about, I think it's like 2.5 to 3 minutes or something, like 2.5 to 3.5 minutes or something like that they cut it down to. And this one was more used as the kind of the abstract concept of it, as opposed to a defined story that they wanted to tell. Although in this one they do still move into the concept of, light versus dark. The beginning of it is just, clouds and the music breaking through and causing the light to break through the clouds and stuff like that. And it's, time to it, of course. And the basic characters in it are these butterflies, little shards that resemble butterflies, reds, oranges, all the different colors of the rainbow. And, there's, we meet these two little butterflies, and, we give personality to these things. And then there's this rumbling and shaking that comes in from, the ground, and then outbursts these black bats that just start to, explore and attack the different light pieces, the different butterflies. And it's, the concept of, everything becomes covered in darkness at one point. And even at one point, it's like the bat things surround all of the butterflies together. And then they end up like enclosing everything in darkness. But then the bats kind of break apart, kind of like they crumble, and then the light comes through, and then the butterflies are able to escape. So it's like the concept of, light will conquer over darkness. Light ultimately conquers over that. There's not really any too much of an introduction to that. We still have the interstitials in between where we see the musicians and everything, and where we see, different people talking. The original one was, of course, kind of narrated a bit by, I think it was Dean Taylor was the gentleman that did it the first time for Fantasia. And then this time around they have different celebrities that come in, some that have been in different Disney movies, some of them that have not, that are just, celebrity, that were just, famous celebrities at the time, or that had connections to some of these different people in regards to the sequences themselves. The first one that has it introduced is we have Steve Martin. And, so we have him having, fun little bit there, making some jokes and everything. And we are then introduced to, I think it is Itzhak Perlman. Itzhak Perlman is the kind of the one that fully introduces the next piece, which is Pines of Rome, which is just a fun thing. It's, it's like, admittedly, they were like, okay, how can we do this? Do we want to do it this way? Do we want to do it that way? And then somehow they came up with the concept of flying humpback whales. Hey, I'm fine with that. And so it's, the whole sequence is literally just, this mom and dad whale and their baby whale. And it's them flying, you see them first just, jumping in and out of the water, and then they start flying. And they're flying around in the Arctic, and there's the aurora borealis everywhere, and it's just gorgeous. And then, the little baby whale gets separated, but, then makes its way back to its parents, and then there's more whales that show up, and there's even more, flying all over the place. And, flying higher and higher and higher and higher, and, breaching through the clouds. And then I think the end of it is like them breaching into space is like the final sequence that we get, is then just, the way that, humpback whales breach out of the water and can get, like, so much of their body out of the water, like just doing that. And it's gorgeous, and I love it. And it's just, beautiful music timed so well with it, and it does kind of tell a definite story. And I just like it so much. It's not my favorite piece in this. I have two in this one that I always tie for my favorite sequence in Fantasia 2000. I will say that my favorite sequence, I think, I don't remember if I mentioned this in the original Fantasia sequence, but I do think that my favorite sequence out of the original Fantasia is, as much as I love The Sorcerer's Apprentice, is actually, I would have to say that my favorite one of the original one is definitely the Nutcracker Suite, just because of all the beautiful nature and the fairies and everything that are there. But back to Fantasia 2000. We have the humpbacks, diving and flying and soaring and jumping out of the water, and it's just gorgeous how they did it. And it is computer animated. That is I believe that sequence is like beyond like maybe some bits of the background are 100% computer animated. And they had been discussing, because in the bonus features, of course, they discuss the different sequences, but they were discussing the fact that um, there had been all these different sequence, what they were trying to come up with. They had the idea for the song for what the piece was going to be, but they didn't have an idea of exactly what the picture was going to be. And like someone had drawn clouds, and then someone had drawn whales, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And then we have flying whales in the Arctic, which is just gorgeous in my opinion. Um, but then we move from that. We have the Rhapsody in Blue, which I don't know if this is 100% true or not, but I think this one might be my dad's favorite piece out of it, because my dad very much likes jazz, and I like jazz, and I just think it's just fun, beautiful, colorful piece that they did for it. And Rhapsody in Blue is introduced by Quincy Jones, who is, I think he's just, my main familiarity with him is he is a music producer and has found all these different, um, all these different musicians and performers over the years. And I don't think I mentioned this. I think I missed this when I was talking about the Pines of Rome. The Pines of Rome sequence, well, the Pines of Rome music is done by, probably going to butcher the name, Torino Rapishkis. I apologize. I probably butchered that entirely. This one I'm not going to butcher, however. Rhapsody in Blue is, of course, George Gershwin. And they have the characters, and the whole sequence is basically, it was basically done entirely by the same guy that did Genie in Aladdin. Yeah, the entire sequence is basically done by the guy that did Genie in Aladdin. And because it's all based off of like the different characteristics of like Al Hirschfeld. And I talked about him quite a bit in the Aladdin video, when I was talking about Genie, and just how much fun that was for him. And he got to work with Al Hirschfeld a little bit with this. And this piece had actually been being developed separately from Fantasia for a while. And because the idea for doing Fantasia 2000, Fantasia Continued, had started in like the 1991, 1992 range. And, Roy had been looking all over for all these different pieces that he wanted to use in it. And they even went back and looked at other notes that like Walt and the other animators had made about all these different sequences that they could have done. One of the ones that they actually did ends up being in this, and I'll talk about that when I get to it. But for Rhapsody in Blue, I don't remember the specific name of the animator. I think it was, I cannot remember the name of the specific animator that did this. I apologize. But the concept is, it was just like they took the Rhapsody in Blue, and it literally starts off as like this little slinky line, turns into like the entire New York skyline. And it's set in 1930s New York in, the Depression era. And it's, it's all of this stuff, shows you all these different points of view of kind of the Depression. And we are introduced to 4 main specific characters, and then they have like little side characters that go along with each of them. And what had happened was, Roy Disney had gone to see the sequence that was in production, and he told the guy that was doing it, how'd you like to be in Fantasia? How'd you like to put this in Fantasia 2000 instead? And I think the guy just jumped at it, and it was just like, it was going to be pretty much put in the same way that it was done, same way that it was designed. I mean, like, over the years, Disney had never stopped doing different, sequences set to music and everything. I mean, like, almost every Disney animated movie has sequences in it that are set to music one way or the other, whether or not it's the songs, whether or not it's just the melody in the background. But then they also did like all the different cartoons over the years that were designed to still play off of that whole musical concept. Some of it brought in classical music, some of it was new music, but still very much set to that concept, and it was beautifully done. And they had also been looking for a way to get an American composer into this, because like so many of the other pieces were all like, European composers and like things that had been around for 100, 200, 300 years at this point in time. in the zeitgeist. And then we had Rhapsody in Blue, which, was, less than 100 years old. And it was based off of Al Hirschfeld art that was, again, Al Hirschfeld was, I think, still alive at the time when they did this. Considering how old he was a while ago, I don't think he's still alive now. And George Gershwin, unfortunately, is definitely dead. But they do, all these beautiful different sequences, and I love it. And I'm just going to talk about it because, so it's set in Depression. We are introduced, as I said, to about 4 specific characters. The first one that we are introduced to is Duke, who is a construction worker, and he's actually late for work at the beginning of it, and he's rushing to work, and he gets there just in time. But he has dreams of being a jazz musician, and he is not happy in his job as a construction worker. He wants to be off, playing drums and making so much beautiful music and everything for people to dance to and everything. And that's just what he wants to do. He wants to be a drummer. And then we are introduced to a jobless man whose name is Joe. And as I said, this takes place during the Depression. So there's, jobs are very scarce at this point in time. And we see him, wandering around. We're introduced to him in a place where he's getting coffee. We see him, dealing with other things, and his dream is, of course, he just wants a job. He wants a paying job so he can have a paycheck. And I can't blame him for that in a time frame when jobs are scarce and everything at that point in time. I do not blame a man for that being his dream. And the third character that we introduced to is a little girl whose name is Rachel. None of these names are stated in the movie by any point in time. But this is just the character names that they were giving later on. They probably have these names for, in production sets of like, well, what can we have Duke do? And what can we have Joe do? And how about Rachel? Rachel is a little girl. Her parents seem to be very well off because they are both employed. And she has all these different lessons that she goes to. Part of the funny sequence is we see her parents on the subway. It's like everybody on the subway all squished together. And then they all run off to go to their job at whatever building. And we get Rachel is being taken by her nanny, a mean nanny or whatever she was called, nasty nanny. I don't remember exactly what was her name, but she's being dragged around to all these different lessons. She has ballet lessons, she has swim lessons where she dresses like this, which is adorable. She has a music lesson and she can't sing. She has piano lessons, and we have her playing on the piano, and then we, scan up to the next window up or whatever, and we have George Gershwin there, the characteristic of George Gershwin there playing the piano, which I love that they stuck that in there. And then we cut down to, her at, I don't know exactly where she's like also at ballet class, she's at music class, she's at art class, and like all these different lessons and everything because her parents have the money, so it's, she can do this. The fourth character that we introduced to is referred to as Flying John, is just his name. He seems to be a very wealthy man, and he has his wife, Margaret, and her annoying little dog. He just wants to be free and have fun and everything. He seems very innocent, and she is not happy about any of that and is quite mean. I think she was referred to as a killjoy Margaret at various points in time throughout the production. And she, they're going to this dog's, this pet store to buy all this stuff for her dog and everything, and he just does not enjoy it at all. Rachel's dream is she wants to spend more time with her parents. She wants to just be able to have fun with her parents on all these stupid lessons and everything, but just be with her parents. And then John's dream is he just wants to be free. He doesn't want to have his annoying wife there. He wants to be able to just go and do what he wants and have fun. And, so we have all these different dreams that they all want to do. And at one point, we have all of the characters all looking out different windows or looking down from wherever they are. And, they're all looking down on Rockefeller Center, on the skate rink at Rockefeller Center, which there are people there skating in the middle of the day. And I'm like, what kind of job do these people have that allow them to skate in the middle of the day? I guess they could be professional skaters, but I'm not sure. But we have all of them, looking down at the skating rink, and they're all, Duke's dreaming of becoming a drummer. Rachel wants to spend more time with her parents. Joe wishes to have a job, and then, John just wishes so he can be free and have fun and everything. And they each, there's kind of like this, they each of them kind of finds an impetus type of a thing, and Duke's kind of the one that sets it off, and they have the kind of like chain reaction, like a Goldberg type machine, where it's like one thing affects another. And Duke just decides, okay, he's had enough with his construction job. He's like, screw it, I'm out of here, and he, runs out of the construction site, tosses his, I think it was a jackhammer or whatever it was that he had, tosses that away and his helmet away. Helmet and the jackhammer land on Joe, and then he is automatically made a construction worker. And I'm like, I think you need more credentials than that to become a construction worker, but okay. But he's made a construction worker and he has a job. And then we have, Duke is, running around. He buys a kid's scooter and rides off on it, going to this jazz night audition that he wants to do. It's right in his way there. On the way there, we have him drive through downtown area, which is where Rachel is. And Rachel has this little ball that she kept carrying around with her to all these different lessons. And the ball falls out of the window and it's falling down. She's rushing down the stairs with her nanny chasing after her. And she's running into traffic to try to get the ball. And, Duke's riding by and the ball bounces off of him, bounces up, bounces off of the window where her mom's working, bounces off the window where her dad's working. They both look out the window. They see their daughter running into traffic. And, climax of that is, both of the parents rush down and save their daughter in the middle of traffic, and they're holding her up. And, like, all the traffic is, like, stopped all around them. And Rachel is safe, and she gets her parents there. So it's like, okay, realize what that your parents, that your kid means more to you than, they spend more time with your kid. And, so she's fine. And, the nanny is just like, and like faints, which is just funny. And then we have, as I said, kind of they interact with each other. And, Duke's gets to where he can go to do the jazz night audition. And then we have Joe, who's no longer jobless. He's, now a construction worker. And earlier we'd seen, John, having to get the bill for everything that Margaret bought. And it's just this long bill that just like folds out. It's just like, not happy. But like he's carrying all these packages and Margaret's next to him, and like Joe is like lowering some type of hook to grab something, but it like swings down and it picks up Margaret and pulls her away. And then John's just like standing there like, where did she go? And he's just like, yay, I'm free. And I don't remember if he like tosses the packages in the air, but like Margaret's like hanging from this like rope up over the crowd and everything, just like screaming and everything. And then we cut to, Rachel spends more time with her parents. We cut to Duke, who is now, playing at the jazz night and everything, and playing on stage with the band. And Joe now has a job, and then John is now happy and dancing with like the chorus girls. And it's just they all got what they wanted. Parents, dream job with a musician job, and just having a job and being free. And that's just a fun sequence they do with that. Then we have what is definitely one of my favorite sequences in this, and it is the Steadfast Tin Soldier sequence, which is introduced by Bette Midler. She kind of talks a little bit about some of the different ideas that they had for other features that they had been trying to do. They had brought in Kai Nielsen, who I mentioned back in the Little Mermaid videos. He had been brought in to kind of do different sketches for the ideas of doing like Little Mermaid back when Walt Disney was still alive. They had done different sketches for like doing something based on Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, and there had been like all these other things, like something based like Salvador Dali, as she refers to him, the limp watches guy, who like something with like baseball as a metaphor for life, and like other things. There was like a bug ballet and a baby ballet and like all this other stuff that they had come up with for all these different ideas that they had wanted. Even something based on like the polka and the fugue, and just like all these other things that have been like all these other different musical sequences that they had wanted to do, but they never quite settled on one. And then they had found these notes that had been made so many years ago, like in Walt's time, that were for the Steadfast Tin Soldier idea. And that is another connection there to Hans Christian Andersen, who was, of course, the gentleman that wrote The Little Mermaid, the original story for The Little Mermaid, And, so they used that story, which is just a fun story in and of itself. And they ended up, there had been an artist at Disney who had made um, beautiful drawings based on the story. And they had never quite found the right music that they wanted to use for it. And they basically just used her drawings as the basis for this. The sequence is all computer animated, but it looks like you've paused this on like almost every single frame of that, and it's gonna look like this could just be like painted in like a book for like a children's book, and it looks beautiful, and I love it. And it is definitely this one and one other one are the two that always tie for my favorite sequence in Fantasia 2000. Um, but the music that they use on it is Piano Concerto Number 2 by Dmitri. I'm probably gonna butcher his last name. Shostakovich. Sorry, yeah, Dmitri Shostakovich. Yeah, Piano Concerto Number 2 is what they use for that, and it is, of course, the story of the Steadfast Tin Soldier. Um, if you are one of the people that watches my video that is also a One Piece fan, this is the story that Kiros from Dressrosa is based off of. Him and Rebecca are kind of this basis for the Steadfast Tin Soldier, because he gets turned into a toy soldier when he is turned into a toy soldier by Sugar. And if you're not one of my One Piece fans and you're just watching this for the Disney movie, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. But, if you're a One Piece fan, you know what I'm talking about. The story of the Steadfast Tin Soldier is a boy gets a set of tin soldiers as toys for whatever, Christmas or whatever, and one of them is different. It only has one full leg, and the other leg is kind of missing, not there, and so it can't quite do what it's supposed to do. And at night, it's the Toy Story idea. Like at night, the toys come to life, and because that concept has been around for so long, and the tin soldier, all the tin soldiers all wake up, and the whole ones go off to go do whatever they're supposed to do. And the tin soldier gets up, and he realizes, okay, I only have one leg, type of a thing. And he looks over, and we have been introduced to this ballerina character who is adorable, and she's has her little dancing area that she's on, and she is dancing and everything. And at one point she's, in, the ballerina pose, which I cannot do, where it's like she's, up on one leg, and he comes over and he notices it looks like, oh, she only has one leg, because he couldn't see the other leg because it was up behind her. And he's like, oh, she has one leg like I do. And he like picks this, this fake little rose that's there, and he walks over to her, and he kind of holds it out to her, and she, straightens up, and the other leg comes down, and she just looks so sad. He's like, and she's just like, I don't quite think she realized what it was, but she still wants to be very nice to him and everything. And she reaches down and she picks up the rose and pretends to sniff it, and then she like puts it onto her waist and everything, so it's part of her dress. And her and the toy soldier kind of start playing a little bit, teasing each other a little bit and dancing around. And then we have the evil Jack in the Box, who is our villain for this piece, and he wants the ballerina to be his. And he ends up, he wants the ballerina to be his, and he gets angry at, the toy soldier, and him and the toy soldier fight. And at one point, the toy soldier ends up by a window that gets knocked open, because the Jack in the Box is like throwing wooden blocks at him, and like a little wooden carved ship at him. And the soldier gets knocked out of the window, and he gets, stuck on the boat. And the boat, goes down into the sewer and everything. And we get the sequence of him going through the sewer, and there's rats all over the place. And he escapes the rats, and then he ends up getting eaten by a fish. And then, the next morning, it's, the fish gets caught, and, because fresh fish, fish gets caught, and then it gets taken, and it gets bought by a lady, and when she picks it up, out of the mouth falls the tin soldier. And there's a boy that is the same little boy that, got the tin soldier at the beginning of the piece, picks it up, realizes that it's his. I hope he cleans it off, because it was inside of a fish. And he puts it back into the little case with the other ones. And the evil Jack-in-the-Box had been trying to win the heart of the ballerina, but that's not working because the ballerina doesn't like him because he's not nice. You knocked away the guy that I liked. Why would I like you? He tries to even give her like a whole little bush of fake roses. She's like, no, I don't want that. Go away. And it ends up being, it just is the sequence. And then the next that night when they all wake up again, she's happy. The ballerina is very happy that the Tin Soldier is back. And what ends up happening is the Tin Soldier ends up then fighting the Jack-in-the-Box all on his own to protect the little ballerina. And basically what ends up happening is the Jack-in-the-Box ends up falling into the fireplace. Yeah. Okay, Jack-in-the-Box is no longer around. It got burned. That'd be like that kid wakes up in the morning. Where'd my Jack-in-the-Box go? Where the frick did it go? Dad, I'm still trying to figure out how your Tin Soldier fell out of a fish type thing. But that and then the ballerina and the Tin Soldier are happy, and then they're happily reunited, and then they just pose together, and it's just pretty. And as I said, that is just one of my other favorite sequences in it is definitely one of my favorite sequences. Can never decide between the two, this one or the final one, which one is my favorite. And then from there, we just have a funny sequence that is just Carnival of the Animals, which is, for all intents and purposes, it's introduced by James Earl Jones. I didn't mention this with Bette Midler, but Bette Midler also was the voice of Georgette in Oliver and Company, several videos back. She's the voice of Georgette. And then, of course, we have James Earl Jones, who is, of course, Mufasa. And we do the song that they use here is The Carnival of the Animals. Camille Saint-Saëns's Carnival of the Animals. And the entire basis of this is, what would happen if you gave a flock of flamingos a yo-yo? And the fact that they have James Earl Jones introduced is just funny. And I just basically use his little quote for it at the end of this because it's like it's one of my favorite quotes out of this whole thing, and it's just that's the one on the end of this, and it's just funny. It's like the age-old question: what is man's relationship to nature? Hands a note. This handed a note by the guy next to him that was like is one of the animators. That the sequence was also, I think, directed by the same guy that did the Rhapsody in Blue sequence. And it's just this fun sequence. And he hands him a note, and he looks at the note. Excuse me. What would happen if you gave a yo-yo to a flock of flamingos? Who wrote this? It's just basically James Earl Jones' reaction, and it's funny. And then the Carnival of the Animals is just this fun sequence and everything, just like fun sequence in the middle of the movie. And what ends up happening is we have this flock of flamingos, and then we have this one little odd flamingo who likes to play with yo-yos. And I would have a yo-yo, but I don't have a yo-yo because I was never good with yo-yos. This bird is better with yo-yos than I am. And he's like, doing all these different tricks and everything. And then like the other flamingos come along and they kind of like beat him down and try to make him conform, and he's not happy. And then he just like plays with the yo-yo more, and then he like ends up torturing the other flamingos with the yo-yo by doing like tricks around them and confusing them. And then like they take away his yo-yo and they like tie it up, and then they think that they beat him, and then he pops out of the water underneath him, and they're all tied up with another yo-yo. And he's got like all these other yo-yos, and he's doing like walk the dog and rock the cradle, walk the dog and rock the cradle in a UFO, and like all these other different tricks and everything, just having fun with the yo-yos. And it's just a fun little sequence. And then we have the Sorcerer's Apprentice sequence, which is actually introduced by Penn and Teller. So the magician duo and everything, and they're basically their whole shtick at the beginning of it is Penn basically with like Teller in the background, like showing off, demonstrating things, whatever you've seen at like a birthday party or whatever. All stage musician stuff is fake, frauds, tricks, sleight of hand, trick of the eye, whatever. All of it's fake, fake, fake. And we have like Teller in the background, like pulls a rabbit out of a hat, cards behind the head turns into like an axe, tends to chop off his own hand, which is of course fake, and then blah 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 blah. And he's like, and then Teller and then Penn is like, but this guy This guy taught us everything we know. He's the genuine article. And then they go into the Sorcerer's Apprentice sequence, which, if you want to hear me talk about the Sorcerer's Apprentice sequence, just go back and watch the original Fantasia video and fast forward and you'll find it. And then from there, we have the, from there we have like a little interstitial thing where we still have, because at the end of the original sequence for, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, we have Mickey go and shake hands with the guy that was the conductor at the time, Mr. Stokowski. And then we have it where it cuts, and it's Mickey running over, still in the Sorcerer's Apprentice armor, running over to James Levine, who was, I think he was the musical director for this. And they have them, he's like, Mr. Levine, everything's ready for the next sequence. We just can't find Donald. And Levine's like, okay, well, okay. And Mickey's like, you just stay here and stall for time, and I'll go get Donald. And like he runs off to go and find Donald. So we have like that going on in the background. We have like James Levine talking about like, this next sequence is based off of Pomp and Circumstance, which, if you've heard Pomp and Circumstance, is basically what they play at graduations most of the time when, it's like that long sequence of the march of, I can't do this. It's a long sequence of the march of, all the graduates going across the stage and getting their diplomas or whatever, shaking the hand of the principal or the dean of the college. If it's a college graduation, that's usually what they use is Pomp and Circumstance, which is fine. I mean, I've been to, my own graduation, number of other graduations throughout my life. They use Pomp and Circumstance, fine, whatever. But they take it and they basically turn it into Noah's Ark with Donald Duck as the assistant. Which I'm like, okay, Mickey got a sequence in this one, Donald gets a sequence in this one. If they ever do like a Fantasia, I don't know, Fantasia 2007 or well, done 2007, but like Fantasia 2000, I don't know, 2030 or something like that, I don't know. Then, Goofy will get his own sequence in that, whatever. Goofy needs a sequence on this now. But we have, Donald there, and like Daisy is part of the sequence too. But we have Noah there, and he has the ark all built, and he has Donald as his assistant. And, Donald's job is to get all the animals onto the boat. And him and Daisy are, getting, we have all these animals that pop up in the sequence, and I'll kind of go through a list of them at the end of it, because, we have that going in the background. There's like, all different animals from all over the world that are there, and, everyone's getting onto the boat and everything. And actually in the background at one point, they show like a laughing dragon, a unicorn, and I think it's a griffin that are all just like laughing in the background at like all the other animals, like, ha ha ha, you're gonna get on a boat, it's just gonna rain, nothing's gonna happen. And it's like, yeah, I guess that's how we no longer have dragons, griffins, or unicorns. But then again, the griffin or the unicorn or the griffin or the dragon could always just start flying around and just avoid the water. Unicorn not so much, but they could always pick up the unicorn when the water got too high. But we just have them laughing in the background. But we have Donald and Daisy kind of unfortunately end up getting separated at one point. And, it's kind of a not a fun sequence to watch, but we have it where, Donald thinks that, Daisy didn't get on the boat, didn't get on the ark, and Daisy thinks that Donald didn't get on the ark. So the whole 40 days and 40 nights that, it rains, and then, when the rain stops and everything, that whole time, neither of them know that the other one is on the ark, even though, Donald and Daisy are probably still doing their jobs. They just, they don't know that they think that the other one didn't get on the boat. And, they get sad when they see all the other animals in their pairs and everything. And then, when the flood waters recede, and, it's, when the flood waters recede, they land on top of the mountain, and then all the animals come out of the ark, which is just a funny sequence in and of itself. And we have it that, and, Donald's, getting everyone out of the ship, and, Noah pats him on the head, and then, Daisy had this locket that she has in the sequence that has, like her picture of her and Donald in it, and then Donald had a picture that he kept having that he could, pull out and look at it, that was him and Daisy. That's the same picture that's in the locket, which I'm like, locket technology and pictures like this were not available at the time, but for the purposes of tugging at your heartstrings, I will allow it. And he, so he's there, and Daisy has made her way down the Plank and everything. All the animals are out to go out and, you know, repopulate everything. Okay, everybody go back to your continent, because there was like kangaroos and other things. It was like, everybody go back to your continent now. Asia's that way. North America's that way. Go that way for Australia. Somebody do a head count on the whales. We know they can fly, but, you know, we kind of got to make sure that we still have enough of them. Who packed the insects? Did we pack the insects? Where did we put those? you know, that whole sequence there. Yeah, that doesn't have much bearing on this, but I just thought that was always funny commentary that I always thought about when it came to like Noah's Ark as a kid. I'm like, how did the animals get back home? Why didn't they all just stay there? Disney animals, whatever, it doesn't need to make sense. It's funny. And well, like Daisy makes her way down the gangplank and she reaches up to like touch where the locket is and she sees that, you know, the locket's gone. It fell off and she's running back. And like we have Donald there like sweeping up and he sees, you know, she goes to the pile and the locket is in the pile. And at the moment, you know, Daisy gets back and him and Daisy both reach for the locket at the same time. And then Daisy just realizes, you know, they're both just so happy that the other one's not dead. It's like, and like she just like jumps on him and starts hugging him, and I just love that. I'm just like, yeah. And then they walk off into the new Sunset to go find their new home, I guess. It's just a fun sequence like that they did. And there's quite a few Disney cameos in the Noah's Ark sequence. We have Colonel Hothby and Winifred from the Jungle Book. We have two penguins that look like the penguin waiters. We have dogs. We don't have dogs. We have beavers that resemble the beavers from Lady and the Tramp. We have Brutus and Nero, that, you know, the two crocodiles that look like Brutus and Nero from Rescuers. We have it's elephant hippos that look like the hippos from Dumbo are there. We have, you know, two eagles that look like Marahute from the Rescuers Down Under. There's two vultures that look like the vultures from Snow White. There's, you know, two skunks that look like Flower. There's I didn't mention this in the Rescuers Down Under part of the Rescuers video, but there's like a little lizard in the Rescuers Down Under that's a frilled lizard that's named Frank, and he pops up in the background of this. And that's just a fun sequence that they have there. Just fun. And then we have the final sequence that we have for Fantasia 2000s, which between this one and the Steadfast Tin Soldier, I can never figure out which one is my favorite. And this is why we have back here, we have a book that's that has Firebird written on it. It's just beautiful Firebird book. This itself, I don't think has any resemblance to what happens in the Firebird Suite sequence that I'm about to talk about, but it has a Firebird on it and it works for what I wanted to talk about. And then this sequence is called the Firebird Suite, and it is introduced by Angela Lansbury, who of course has been in several Disney movies. She was Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast. She's been in several other Disney movies. She was in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, you know, so many years before that, along with, you know, several others. And the music is just Igor Stravinsky's Firebird Suite. And it's the story of a little spring sprite, little spring spirit, and the trouble that it kind of causes, which is, I guess I could have used Celebi, but I just have Leafeon back here because Leafeon. But we have a moment in this where the sequence is, we're introduced to this elk first, and it comes in and it finds this little spring spirit that's kind of sleeping in this cave, and, you know, takes after a long winter, it takes the spirit out, and the spirit starts to, you know, revitalize everything around it, you know, like all the flowers bloom, fix the grass and everything. At one point, it like makes a little flower that pops up, but it's not satisfied with the flower, so it like makes it even bigger. It's just like big yellow beautiful flower, and then like it takes a tree and it like makes the tree bloom, and it looks like cherry blossoms. and just keeps working its way through all the foliage and the trees and everything, making new life appear and everything. And it's got the elk there that's its friend, and it's just having like all this like beautiful sequence of it going around, and it tries to work its way up what looks to be kind of like a volcano or a mountain, and like it tries to go up the volcano, but the growth won't go any further. So it's like a very curious little spirit, and it's like, huh. So it like works its way up the volcano. Nothing's growing behind it, but it works its way into the volcano, and it finds this. It looks a little bit like an egg in the middle of the volcano, and it kind of works its way up to this volcanic stone, and it touches it, and this giant firebird erupts from it, and it just huge magma type firebird. And the spring spirit's trying to get away, the elk's trying to get away, and the lava is pouring forth from this volcano, just destroying everything in its path, all the trees, all the grass, everything's getting set on fire, and the spirit's trying to escape, and the bird is specifically targeting the spirit, trying to destroy it. It's going all over the place. It's just like destruction everywhere, and burned, and just like everything is dead, and dead and dying around it. And the bird just goes and goes and goes until the bird just kind of dies, and it just goes to consume the spirit, and I guess it kind of destroys itself in the process. The firebird dies, and tries to destroy the spirit. And then we have the elk kind of coming in. It's like everything is gray and covered in ash and soot and just nothing. There's like small bits of dead tree everywhere, but just like nothing, just gray everywhere. And like I think I quoted this in the Lion King video when I was talking about Lion King 2, that when Simba talking to Kovu, fire is a killer, but sometimes what's left behind can grow better than the generation before, which I think is a quote that very much applies to this. And we've seen with Bambi, we've seen with Lion King, with other Disney things, that fire is a killer, that fire can cause so much problem, so much damage when left unattended, when allowed to just spread without it being controlled. I live in the Midwest. I live in the Midwest. I live around farm country. We have people that do controlled burns all the times on different fields, because sometimes it is good for revitalizing the soil and stuff like that. Sometimes having certain types of wildfires in certain areas is actually good for the environment, because it burns away a bunch of the dead brush and then allows the healthy stuff to grow back. And in that cases, that type of stuff, that type of fire, when used smartly, is good. Wildfires, when it's just running rampant, like what happened in California in 2020, and what happened in Australia in 2020, that's different. That's different types of wildfire that is uncontrollable, that is not good for the environment. Certain types are fine. That type of stuff is not good. But we have the elk makes its way through the soot and the ash, and it finds what's left of the little spirit, and the little spirit is just like hunched over and just like so tiny, and like just so small that it would like fit in your hand, from this big vibrant thing that it had been. It's just nothing that like fits in your hand, and it's like got like stuff is like flaking off of it from like the ash and the soot. And the elk helps pick up the little spirit, and it's riding on her. The spirit rides on the elk's antlers, and she's crying because she sees all the destruction around her, and her tears fall on the ground, and out pops flowers and grass. And she realizes that even though there was all that destruction that happened, life is still here. Spring can still come again. Spring can heal this. And she starts to, she gets, the spirit gets her confidence back, and she starts to grow and grow, and just like spreads out her wings for all intents and purposes, just like over everything, fixing the trees, fixing the grass, and just like even spiraling all the way up the remnants of the volcano to cover it in a fresh layer of green, and just fixing all of that, the destruction that was caused by the Firebird. And and the elk's there, and it's happy, and the spirit's happy, and it's just all this beautiful sequences. Life will come again. Life always finds a way, type of a thing, that it will grow. And because that's what happens after forest fires. Life will come back. um Roy Disney, in the bonus features, Roy Disney mentioned that kind of the idea for this came from when Mount St. Helens had blown, at some point not too long before, when they were working on this, what they wanted to use for Fantasia 2000, for Fantasia Continued. And him and his wife had been up to see what had happened with Mount St. Helens, and he had made the comment of, it would just be so cool to be able to leave like a time-lapse photography camera up here and then just watch for like the next 500 years as everything regrows back to looks like it did before all of this happened. And that concept of life will come back. And yeah, as I said, between the Firebird Suite and the Steadfast Tin Soldier piece, those are my two on this one that I can never pick which one I like better. I like them both for different reasons. They're both they're both about good triumphing over evil, life triumphing over destruction, hope, type of a thing. And I loved that. I always loved that, even as a kid when I was watching this. This movie came out when I was like 8, going on 9 range, or around 8 to 9 range, and I remember it. I mean, it's not like I was exposed to classical music for a long time. I mean, it's like if you're a kid and you grew up on Looney Tunes, you were exposed to classical music via Looney Tunes, of course. But like, the original Fantasia exposed you to that. Looney Tunes, yeah, exposed you to that. At my church, I've mentioned before that, at church, and everything, my dad was in the choir, so we would hear lots of different types of classical music that they would use. And it was just like in between things, or like as the prelude or the outlude. And the whole jazz stuff is I don't think this necessarily had a lot of prevalence in this, but when I was in 5th grade, I played the trumpet for a year. I still have the trumpet. I don't ever intend to pick it up again to try to play it again, because after my 5th grade year, I didn't play the trumpet again. It's when at my school, when you were in 5th grade, you could pick if you wanted to try playing an instrument, and I picked the trumpet because my dad had played the trumpet when he was in school, and I was like, well, if I'm going to try an instrument, I want it to be one that my dad knows. And some of my, I don't think we ever played, we did the performances at school and everything for like that year, and by the end of the year, I was like the only trumpet player left, or like me and like one other kid was like were the trumpet players. There were like a couple of us at the beginning of the year, but like the others backed up, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this for my 5th grade year, and I made it all the way through. And this technically has no bearing on like this, but I guess I could tie it back to Rhapsody in Blue, because like trumpets are a big thing in jazz and everything. With Louis Armstrong and his trumpet and jazz and everything, and so you can kind of tie that back into that and everything, but. I always, some of my favorite memories for that were, one of the reasons why I like stuck it out for the year was my dad and I would sit in our kitchen at the house, and we would just, we would play trumpet together. I still have my trumpet. My dad still has his trumpet. They're sitting in the corner somewhere, gathering dust at our apartment, and we still have them. I'm sure my dad would be much better at trying to remember how to play the trumpet than I did, but I did it for a year, and glimpse into my life. That's what you get. I used to play the trumpet. Don't ask me if I can ever play it again. That's not something I ever intend to do, or at least not at the moment. I guess maybe someday I might decide I'll try it again. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. But for Fantasia 2000. As I mentioned in regards to Fantasia, the original Fantasia, there are some bits for Fantasia that tie into like Kingdom Hearts. Um, I don't remember there being anything from like Fantasia 2000 that tied into anything. Not really. There's not really much with Once Upon a Time. I mean, I guess the closest thing to Once Upon a Time is at some point, because they use code names for different things in Once Upon a Time, that Henry at some point makes a comment that was like, oh, we'll use, like Operation Firebird for something, which is, Firebird reference, but, there's not too much besides that in Once Upon a Time. Um, Not really anything else. The Steadfast Tin Soldier and the Ballerina pop up in House of Mouse at one point, and Rachel from Rhapsody in Blue pops up in House of Mouse, but not really too much else besides that happens in the, pops up in anything else, unfortunately. Mostly just because I guess there's not as much story stuff that they can derive from it. There's not flying whales as far as I'm aware of in anything else. There's whales in other Disney movies. There's whales in Finding Nemo and everything, but this not this type of whale where they fly. Um, but there's not really that many other callbacks to that. I have no idea if Disney is ever going to do another Fantasia thing. I would assume at some point in time that there's a ton of other different classical music out there, or jazz, or something else that they could use to, make sequences that would fit right in the canon, the Disney catalog with these things, with, Fantasia and Fantasia 2000. What was it I said earlier? Like Fantasia 2030 or something like that. And Goofy will have his own sequence, and that one instead that's based off of like, I don't know, some type of like slapstick comedy routine type thing that, he has to go through. You get a little bit of the slapstick comedy and the, pomp and circumstance thing, and in the Carnival of the Animals, most definitely. There's a little bit of comedy in Rhapsody in Blue, but not too much. But so we get all that and everything for Fantasia 2000. The next video will be Dinosaur, and that one. After that, it's going to be probably a little bit of a break on the Disney videos for a little while, because I've done so many. I'm like, okay, I'm going to work on some other videos that I wanted to work on. So we'll see where that puts me with what other videos I have up by then. And then, at whatever point I'll do Dinosaur, and then, then at some point, sometime later, I'll get back into the Disney movies. There's not as many after that, but there's still a few. That are still fun to watch and everything. So I'll still work my way through those, and then I'll get back to these. But, Dinosaur will be a break after that for Disney, and I'll have more, Digimon and some other videos that I have ideas for that I'm going to work on. So that's what I got for you. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. Here, the sensitive strains of impressionistic music combine with the subtle artistry of the animator to finally answer that age-old question. What is man's relationship to nature? Oh, sorry. That age-old question. What would happen if you gave a yo-yo to a flock of flamingos? Who wrote this?